I'll maybe tell a joke or something in the meantime if I had one. Cool, thank you. Oh, sweet. So if you've attended one of these sessions before, this might look a bit familiar to you. So this is the sequence of a water quality program or a Clean Water Act 106 program. First and foremost, you identify your program's goals and objectives. Like, what do you want to get out of your Clean Water Act 106 funding? It could be to preserve, your waters or to improve fish habitat. It could be a number of things, but that's pretty much where you start. Click, maybe. Yep. And then next step is to develop a QAPP or a QAP. Our EPA Region 9 office can help you do this. And that kind of sets the protocols for how you'll manage your 106 program. And the next step, my clicker kind of works, is to develop a baseline or how you'll collect your water quality data. Next is to organize the data in a water quality exchange compatible format. This is a new requirement for our program. And we have folks here actually doing one-on-ones. If you want help doing this, that's a really helpful resource that you can utilize here today. Next, once you have your data, you can analyze it and assess the lab and field data. And that'll help you with the next step, which is to identify issues or concerns in your program or on your lands that you want to address either now or in the future. And basically you evaluate that program data and your program in general and decide how you want to move forward next year. And that's when you start back at identifying your goals and objectives of your water quality standards program or your water credit program. Next, this is James Gilhurst at the Colorado River Indian Tribe. Thanks for letting me use your photo if you're in here. I don't see you though. So these are the reporting requirements for a Clean Water Act 106 program. There'll be a short quiz on this later with a prize that Kate brought. So if you want to remember these, you could win a prize. So the first requirement is to have a monitoring strategy or a QAPP, which we discussed. The next is to submit your data into the Water Quality Exchange. And then the third is to have a water quality assessment report. And we'll go over these in more depth in some later slides. These slides. So the Water Quality Project Plan or Program Plan, all grants that use EPA funding to collect water quality data must have a QAPP, and it must be approved by EPA before any sampling or monitoring can begin. And this usually includes a monitoring strategy. And then next we have the water quality, the QAP approval process. Sorry, my clicker's on the fritz. There we go. The QAP approval process, so it starts up here in the top left where tribes developing a QA plan with their project officer, and that is then put into an approved work plan, and then folks can ask for help from our QA office, which we really recommend doing. They're happy to help folks, called a scoping meeting, and then folks draft your QAP or QAPP, then it's submitted to EPA to Audrey Johnson, who's our QA office manager, with the CC to your project officer. And then they review it and approve it. Hopefully that's the final step. If it needs to be edited anymore, it'll be sent back to the tribe and let them know kind of what needs to be fixed, and reviewed with comments from the QA office, and then edits are made, and then it'll go back to be approved. So hopefully it's a pretty seamless process for folks. It shouldn't be too intimidating, but that is the process. Maybe I have to point this towards that. Yes, okay. And then I'm gonna pass it over quickly to Dan, who's in the audience right now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Consigli. I work at EPA headquarters alongside the headquarters Section 106 coordinator. Very happy to be out here in California and learn about how you're all using your Section 106 funds. And so in 2023, EPA released the revised Section 106 tribal guidance. The guidance was developed in consultation with the EPA regions and tribal representatives. And the new guidance has a number of changes from the last one. As one of the themes of this conference is Indigenous knowledge, I wanted to mention that this new revised guidance has a whole section on Indigenous knowledge, and Indigenous knowledge is a focus throughout the guidance. In particular, acknowledging tribal flexibility to adopt Indigenous knowledge into water quality programs and helping identify opportunities to use Section 106 funds to support including Indigenous knowledge into water quality programs. One of the other things is the revised guidance removed the it was the fundamental, intermediate, and mature structure, and instead the guidance is structured around how the majority of tribal programs establish and expand. It eliminated the prior linkage between parameters on that fundamental, intermediate, and mature structure, and instead encourages tribes to work with their project officers to focus on collecting parameters that most meet the needs of their programs. It also includes eligible activities for groundwater and identifies areas where tribes are able to use their funds for sampling. And tribes are, let me get this over. So as Kelly mentioned, the tribes are expected to meet the 3 reporting requirements, which are monitoring strategy, submitting their data through WQX, and their water quality assessment. But they're not expected to share the underlying Indigenous knowledge used to inform their water quality objectives. And tribes that use their Section 106 funds to collect Indigenous knowledge are not required to report that shared knowledge as part of their grant requirements. And so I think I'm going to pass it to Kate.
Thanks, Dan. And so one reason we pop this information into this part of our presentation is one of the main changes with the new guidance is requiring data to be submitted directly in a WQX. It used to be you just had to submit it in a WQX compatible format. You could just email an Excel template, Excel document to your project officer, but this is a new requirement. The guidance came out last year, but it will be in grant conditions that started in October. There can be some exceptions, and you should talk to your project officer about that. But it is one reason why we have one-on-one technical support at the conference this year to help you out with that. If you don't already have an appointment, a lot of them are booked up, but I think you could, walk in and see if they might be able to help you out. I think there were some cancellations tomorrow morning, and there might still be some spots available tomorrow, Thursday afternoon. And there's always, I'm going to talk about this more, but availability remotely to get WQX help. Pointer. I see what you mean, Kelly. Oh, there we go. When you're submitting data into WQX, there's 3 main categories of data that you're submitting. So there's the projects, which is a brief summary of what you were monitoring. So in some cases, that might just be we're submitting data for our 106 program. That might be it. Some programs may have different water quality monitoring goals or program goals. So for example, HAB monitoring, some tribes have very extensive harmful algal bloom monitoring, so they might have a project specific to that. Otherwise, it might just be your general 106 program. And then your monitoring locations, so where was that monitoring taking place, and then what the results were. So what were the actual outcomes of the monitoring? What, for example, levels of pH did you see? Oh, maybe hopefully I didn't go too fast. Okay, so there are templates available for submitting into WQX. There's a screenshot of the different columns of information in that template, or at least one of the templates on the screen here. The templates will indicate which information is required. Not all categories are required, but some of the examples of required categories include project name, identifier, monitoring location, GPS data collection used, and start dates of that activity. You don't have to use the template. You can use your own spreadsheet. You just may need to designate what's called an import configuration for submitting into WQX, and it basically tells WQX like this column is, you know, our location of monitoring. This column is, you know, our project name, just so that WQX can read your spreadsheet. But you don't have to use the templates. It's just available to you if you want to use it. It's also helpful to talk to your lab about getting, if you're sending samples to a lab, to get your data back in an electronic format, not necessarily a PDF, because that will help you transfer that data, minimize data errors from manual entry, and just overall amount of work. You may even want to send them, you know, the lab that you work with, this template, so they know what kind of information, you know, we're asking for to submit into EPA. Okay. So as I mentioned, we have one-on-one assistance available here in the conference. The room is located at the basement below the ballroom, across from the bathrooms near our Clean Water Act table, if you've seen our Clean Water Act table. So you may want to just drop in if you haven't made an appointment, just see if there's any help available. If not, there's always available help online. There's a website with videos listed here. If you're not able to write down this website, I think these slides will be available in Excel events afterwards, so don't stress too much. But one easy email address to remember is wqx@epa.gov. You can always email that address for help with submitting your data into WQX. And there's also a phone number you can call for help remotely, but I would definitely take advantage of the in-person assistance if you can. Okay, maybe that way. So we'll get into this a little bit when Kelly talks about some of the trends that we've seen, but these are some of the most common field sampling parameters we see: dissolved oxygen, pH, temperature, conductivity, and turbidity. As Dan mentioned, there used to be kind of a required set of fundamental parameters. We no longer have that, you know, tailor it to your needs. These still are probably recommended parameters to get a good idea of your water quality, and also maybe macroinvertebrates too, if you're up for that. And we recognize there's challenge with, you know, maintaining your equipment, getting sufficient training. We are going to mention some training opportunities that are available later in this presentation. These are also the common parameters that we see more often sent to labs for analysis. So cyanobacteria, metals, nutrients, bacteria. We recognize some of the challenges that, you know, tribes experiences holding times with getting those samples to labs if you're in really remote areas. So that's just something to think about when you're picking labs to work with where you're collecting samples, and again, getting training. Okay. And if you need more information about some of these common parameters, headquarters a couple years developed these fact sheets that are available on our website about some of the more commonly monitored parameters like temperature, pH, macroinvertebrates here. And they discuss, you know, why do we monitor that parameter, what factors can affect variation in that parameter, recommended criteria for that parameter, tips for monitoring. So that's available online as well. I think Kelly, you're up. There you go.
All right, so we're going to talk about the final third requirement in the Clean Water Act 106 program, which is the Water Quality Assessment Report, or WQAR. So these are kind of the things that the components that are included in a WQAR. If you've done one before, these probably look quite familiar to you. There's an atlas of tribal water, a narrative description of the water quality monitoring program and assessment methods, tables which are describing the water bodies, tables describing causes and sources of impairments, a narrative description of the results of water quality monitoring on your reservation, and a narrative description of the issues of tribal concern. So this slide is kind of what the template looks like. We suggest to folks to use the template, but if you don't, that's totally fine. And in the next few slides, we're going to talk about the results from the fiscal year 22-23 water quality assessment report analysis that we did. So in total, 42 tribes in Region 9 utilized the template and monitored a total of 330 waters. And there were 389 monitoring stations in total. So the next few slides, I think there's about 5. There'll just be some charts of the results. If my clicker works. So in total, most waters were sampled annually or biannually, some going all the way down to continuous monitoring, which is kind of intermittently when there's water available. For folks in the Southwest, you know, that can be random. And then the chart on the right is the total parameters monitored each station. So most of the monitoring stations covered things like pH, temperature, turbidity, and then some went all the way down to macroinvertebrates or basic habitat. Some folks did E. coli. So there's kind of a range of what parameters folks monitored for. Oh, my bad. I think I just clicked it like 6 times, so it's probably going to do that again. I apologize. So here are the results for the primary sources of impairment. You can see that most of the time it's unknown, an unknown non-point source. Other times it's upstream or off reservation. And with the least frequency, it's upstream sources and urban impacts. And then the chart on the bottom is the tribal goals and designated uses. So most folks are trying to protect aquatic life and wildlife or something related to a cultural use. The lowest thing is for drinking water and irrigation. And this is what the Atlas of Tribal Waters, the other tab in the WQAR, looks like, just for your knowledge. We get this question a lot, and it might be good to address it here quickly. There's this on the right, there's the chart for off-reservation miles, stream miles, or acres monitored, and the Clean Water Act 106 program does allow folks to monitor waters off-reservation. So this is kind of what the Atlas of Tribal Waters WQAR template results were. So most of the waters monitored were from lake acres versus wetland acres, and then you can see on the right there's the number of springs and groundwater wells that were monitored in total in Region 9. And I think this is the final one. This photo is from the La Jolla Band of Luiseño Indians. And this just shows the stream and estuary miles monitored, mostly stream, not so much estuary, but it does happen in Region 9. And then this is over to Kate, I believe.
Yeah. And I'm just going to add one quick clarification to the off-reservation monitoring. We do allow off-reservation monitoring. There is some conditions. It has to show some connection to your reservation waters. Like it can't just be anywhere, downstream, upstream. And also you have permission from the landowner. In some cases, that's the tribe. It's just adjacent land that the tribe owns. Just talk to your project officer, Kelly and I, if you have questions about that. And So one thing I'm going to talk about today is, while we still encourage the use of the WQAR template that Kelly went over, one thing that has been emerging the past few years is tribal use of the ATTAINS system. ATTAINS stands for Assessment, TMDL, Tracking, and Implementation System. And it's the program that states use to report their assessment decisions, water quality assessment decisions. And so for the past few years, 12 tribes from Region 5, 6, and 9 have been submitting assessment decisions into this system as a potential alternative to water quality assessment reports. It was a request out of another region, and it started as a pilot. And based on some feedback we got from tribes participating in the pilot, they seem to like it. So we've been soliciting for new participants in this program. And so now this shows the timeline. It started in 2016. And since then, there's been multiple rounds of training, multiple submissions, solicitations for new participants. And when the new participants come on, there's tribal participants who mentor those new folks. And I think the newest round of participants had a training last month, and they're even thinking about seeing if new folks want to join next year. So if this is something that sounds interesting to you, again, talk to your project officer. Feel free to come up to me after the presentation to talk about it a little bit more. ATTAINS doesn't do the assessments for you. You still have to do the assessments outside of that system. It's just where you report it, kind of like the water quality assessment report. It also doesn't replace WQX. It's more of the possible replacement for water quality assessment reports. One nice thing about ATTAINS is it does these reports automatically. So it was great. Kelly did all those summary reports and graphs that we shared earlier. And we had 43 tribes that used our template that enabled us to do that. If tribes are submitting into ATTAINS, it also produces these really interesting reports about, designated uses. Again, aquatic life is one of the top designated uses, at least for this tribal example, and it'll indicate, are those uses being supported or not, based on what was reported or the parameters that are being monitored. Again, temperature is pretty high in terms of frequency of monitoring and whether it's being met or not in terms of what criteria the tribe is using. In this example, the tribe has their own EPA approved water quality standards. So that graph is indicating whether they met their standards or not. And I'm going to move to the next. There we go. So if tribes are participating in ATTAINS, there's also, they also have tribal pages in EPA's website called How's My Waterway. It's a place you can go online, check out the water quality reported conditions in your area. And so for now, it's just tribes that have been participating in ATTAINS that have these pages. So you can go on and look for those. In Region 9, we just have one tribe so far with one of these pages, Hoopa, but 2 new tribes have joined the ATTAINS project since then, so we may have more. The folks at headquarters are considering also making these pages for tribes that submit into WQX. So if you have thoughts about that, feel free to relay that to me to send that feedback up. And now's the quiz time. And we'll try to move quickly because we also have some great tribal presenters lined up to give some, on the ground case study information. But okay, so does anyone want to raise their hand and say the 3 reporting requirements? There is a prize. Yes, so the QAP, Quality Assurance Project Plan, WQX data, and the Water Quality Assessment Report. So you get this fun EPA bag, and I'm just sorry I'm opening your gift for you. I'll let you open one of the things, but one is the new 106 guidance, which you can pick up at our Clean Water Act table. And make sure your project officer records it because we're trying to make sure everybody gets it. There's also something else in there, not just guidance documents. Anyway, I think Alan is up next, right? Oh, shoot. One more thing. Sorry, Alan. I got ahead of myself. We are going to have a training next year. You should have gotten a save the date last week. So if you didn't and you want more information, please contact Larry Morin or Nico Anderson. I think I saw Nico in here. Do you want to raise your hand? Oh, they're both over there if you want more information about this training. It's in person. It'll cover Clean Water Act grant programs, regulatory programs, TAS, and we'll offer field trips to nearby sites of interest. And the agenda is still being developed. And if you want to provide input on the agenda, try to scan your phone here or just go talk to Larry and Nico because we're going to change this slide soon. And we hope to see everyone there. And Kelly and I's contact information is on this next slide. And then we're going to move to Alan, right? Ooh, I'm just going to go ahead. Oh, wow, this clicker's fun. Okay. Okay, there you go. Good luck with the clicker.
Do you think you're pointing it at that projector? Okay. I don't know where. Did they tell us? No. All right. Can everybody hear me? I'm not going to use the microphone.
You might want to for the online folks.
Oh,
Sorry. Sorry.
very good. So my name is Alan Dorward, and I'm with Yavapai Prescott Indian Tribe. We're in Arizona. So we have, our elevation is 5,100 feet. So it's not like the regular geography that you're thinking of about Arizona. We're not desert. We really have 4 different seasons there. We get 2 or 3 major snows in December or January, and then we have probably our monsoon months are July and August, so we can get significant rainfall during those 2 months. And on the map here, you can see that. So this pointer right here. So you can see that the Granite Creek waterway, that it bisects the reservation right here. And we are urban. So we're a smaller tribe, but we're urban. So urban runoff is a very important thing for us to check in monitoring, an important reason to monitor. Our sample areas are here at the ingress right here where water comes onto the reservation. So that's surface water 1, and then surface water 6 is where the water exits the reservation. So this 1.5 mile section here is all that we're monitoring. And whoop. Yeah, it's back. Definitely it's back. Okay. For those online. So step 1 for all of us is data collection. Obviously, you collect your water samples and then you submit them to the lab of your choice. Obviously, we're using Legend Technical Services in Arizona. And then they do a PDF format for us. They also do the electronic version for the same price. So they're sending us an Excel SX spreadsheet that we can upload directly using the water quality exchange. And what do we, that helps us. And so this is just a graphic here of the whole process. Everybody in the room here is at box number 1. We're the submitters. We're submitting data each year. Box number 2, if your tribe is large enough and you've got some people that are trained in XML format, you could do a custom upload by using that box number 2. Box number 3 is what we use. It's the Central Data Exchange, CDX, and we're submitting Excel data directly to that. And then boxes 4, 5, and 6 are just the EPA data silos. They used to call this Store It, so a lot of you will recognize the name Store It, but now it's changed to the Water Quality Exchange database. If you have not done so, once you get your CDX login and password, You can go back 20 years and data mine. So that might be very important for some people in the room that are new in their job. You could go back 20 years and pull data just in case it's not on a shelf somewhere at your tribe. And then what do you do with the data? One thing that we do is year-over-year trends. A lot of you may already do some bar graphs or some simple graphs. So for the various different elements that and minerals that you find in the water, obviously when we drill down, we're only going to look at an exceedance to be concerned with or to have a game plan for. I've picked out one here where the water comes onto the reservation. It's arsenic. Arsenic, of course, occurs naturally in the water and the soil. So when it comes onto the reservation, it's very static. It doesn't change year over year. This is a 5-year look, 2017 to 2024. And then when it exits the reservation, what is it doing? In year 2019, you can see here we had a dip. That's only 2 2,000ths or 2 2,000ths of a milligram per liter difference. And then when you take a look over 20 years, that difference is not really going to show up as much. But in our 5-year, we do see that dip there, and it might be something that we want to take a look at. And then in your representation to the board, so you really have 2 audiences, right? You have EPA that you're uploading this data to, but you also have a board. They want to know that the water is good and a high quality, or if there's a deficiency, what we're doing for that. So on groundwater, so switching to well readings here, we've got a lot of times the position of the well is more important than the data, or as important as the data you take. So well number 10 right here had in 2023, there's quite a dip in the amount of sodium that was in the water. But well number 7, there's no dip at all. Well number 10 just happens to be right next to the Granite Creek there. And well 7 is 30 or 40 yards away from the creek. So away from the creek, all our mineral levels are really static. They're the same every year. At well 10, you can see a lot of different activity year over year as far as the concentration of certain materials. And then for the graphic response or the graphic representation, you can see that well number 7, pretty static. The arsenic is not changing very much year over year. But then in year 2023, we had a little tick up, and then 2024, it continues to tick up. So that might be some area that we're looking at. And that's just an example or brief example of what we do with the data. Thank you.
All right. My name is Zach Dragone, and I'm an environmental scientist with the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. And I'm going to go over our usage of the water quality assessment reports. So the location that I'm monitoring at is located in the foothills east of Sacramento. So it's mainly focused on like intermittent and ephemeral streams. And for a little bit of background here, we began water quality testing through the 106 grant around 2012. But I recently just took over this program in the past year and a half. So I'm, carrying on this this legacy of monitoring for a long period. And it's cool that I have, all of that data to go off of when I'm able to make decisions and to do some of this analysis. And as part of the program, we have 4 water quality monitoring sites that are located on trust lands. And the monitoring takes place during the wet season each year. We do 1 to 2 monitoring events depending on the amount of rainfall and the amount of flow that we're seeing in these streams. So when we're filing the water quality assessment report, we use the template that these guys talked about a little bit ago. And it's pretty straightforward. It's just an Excel spreadsheet with a number of different tabs and columns that you can fill in. So first of all, we have the Atlas of Tribal Waters, which is like the acres of lakes and reservoirs, the length of the streams, what we're seeing in those specific bodies of water. And that's pretty straightforward because our monitoring locations and our Atlas is staying the same from year to year. So I can carry that over from the previous year's submission. But what is different is the actual results that we're seeing. So initially, I'm putting together the results from the WQX report, and I can run this through a script that we have in the R statistics software, which can flag if there's data that's falling above a specific threshold. We can use that to put together graphs. We can use that to map stuff out, and I'll get into that more in a little bit. But basically, I can take the data that we've collected and look for if there is certain water quality impairments. And when I'm doing that, it's really important for me to be able to know what's the specific use cases for each body of water. What is it that we are trying to achieve with each of these body of waters? And I can use that to be able to figure out what the impairments are. And then once all of that information is filled here into the spreadsheet template, we have the narrative. And the narrative is basically just giving me the opportunity to elaborate a little bit more once we have that that data, fleshed out in numeric format here. So the data analysis, I'm doing it using the R statistics software. And when you look at the code up there, it seems a little bit intimidating, but it is pretty straightforward once you get the hang of it. And there's lots of resources online to figure out how to use this software. And the really cool thing that I'm able to do with this is that I have a script that automates all of the analysis. So if I'm putting my data together in the same format in a spreadsheet each year, I can just run it through this script and it can flag pieces of data that are above a certain threshold. It can make graphs, it can map everything out. So it takes a little bit more work up front, but I would say that it's very much worth the time to be able to just have this automated system that you can run everything through and have what you're looking for. And here's an example of one of the things that I've been able to do with that script. And I have the data whited out there because it's internal, but that is an example of one of the things that I've been able to make available. I have a map of all my water quality monitoring sites, and I have a number of different factors like the E. coli levels, the pH, a number of the different factors that we're looking at there. And I have this interactive map where you can go just click on the location of the site and then it pulls up a graph of the data. So this is a good way to be able to communicate data that's going to be important and relevant to people and get that across in an easy to understand format. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. I think we might have a couple minutes for questions. Maybe Daniela could tell me if not. Yeah, if there's any questions for Dan or Alan or Zach or Kate or myself, I'm happy to walk over the mic to you. Don't ask us how to use the clicker. We do not know how. Oh, wait, he's got you a mic. I can bring you this one. Okay.
So my question is, for if the tribe has water quality standards, that also like the standards are for other parameters that are not requirements of the 106. Okay, I'll start over. My question is, if a tribe has water quality standards and they have standards for other parameters that aren't required in the 106, do we still have to report that information to EPA if we get any of those testings done? And how do we do that?
Yeah, so if it's using 106 funding, yes, I think that's right. But if it's not, then no.
Okay, great.
Or any EPA funding. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? There's one here and then one in the back. And then that's probably all our time.
Hi, thanks. My name is Ian. I work for the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission. This might be a comment disguised as a question, but can you, from EPA's standpoint, talk about how y'all are going to leverage like all these hours and effort that's going to go into these WQARs and putting all this info onto WQX, and like what are the plans in the next 10 years to leverage that like really valuable data to help us get more money and resources and help protect the environment on Indian country. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I mean, part of why we're doing these water quality assessment report analysis is to get that important summary information that you all are sending us. You know, I think we heard from folks that, oh, we're sending you this and where does it go? And now we have this summary report information. I mean, we don't have it from everyone because not everyone's required to use the template. But it does help give us a good picture of what's going on in Indian country, how you're using our funds, and we can use that to communicate up towards our management. And we also have Dan here from headquarters. I don't know if you want to say anything about how that could potentially, you know, information could be carried up forward. And that's also part of why, you know, EPA, I believe, is looking towards having tribal data on apps like How's My Waterway, seeing that that data is getting reported, seeing that it's available, seeing that it's getting used, and tribes are really using this money and producing really interesting information that people want to know about. So I would say that that's one of the reasons that we're welcome to hear other ideas for how to use that, and that's a really good point. In the back.
So I saw that location is a required aspect into WQX, but how do we navigate that if some of the areas that we're sampling are also culturally relevant and like, you know, ceremonial?
Yeah, that question has come up, and I think that's a good conversation to have with your project officer. And also the WQX helpline also has some suggestions for how to handle those. There are some ways to maybe make it not like public information, like still submit it into WQX, but it's not necessarily public. But I would recommend contacting the WQX help desk about that. And also talk to your project officer. For example, also maybe those aren't sites that you should use 106 funding to monitor. Maybe try to use tribal funds, and then there would be no reporting requirements for that specific location. Okay. We did start late, but I think we still finished like reasonably on time. So, okay, we're getting thumbs up. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. You all did great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
It was really interesting. I was like, wow, tell me more.